Well, welcome everybody. We're excited to have you all back for our 3E solution-based sales series. For those of you who are joining us again in the series, we're happy to have you back here with us. For those of you joining for your first time, man, welcome. Welcome. We're happy to have you here. So as a quick refresher of how this series is built out, we are currently in cycle 3 of this solution-based sales series for our supplier-led training events. And during cycle 3, all of our classes are going to be focused on helping us become more proficient at selling into the construction industry. So we're excited to have 3M with us here today, really breaking down the construction industry, the segments that are in there, letting us know some of the trends that are coming out in the industry, and the ways that they would go to market and suggest going to market. And just like you see in this series, we're going to make sure that today that we spend some time focusing on the pains and challenges that our customers in construction will face when it comes to managing their safety program. So 3M is going to help us understand what areas to target during those conversations to hopefully see if we can find some pains we can provide solutions to out there. And for all of y'all who are attending the live show today, we're super thankful for you being here live, supporting the suppliers of our group. So for being here live, we're going to do a few extra things to take care of you, as you guys know. We're going to make sure that today you'll get not only just the recording of today's class, but we're also going to make sure that you get a copy of the slide deck that 3M's been very kind to hand over to y'all. We're also going to make sure that we give you guys our target opportunity sheet, and y'all know that target opportunity sheet. It's a summary of the questions that we would suggest asking as you're facilitating a conversation with one of these construction clients. 3M's went above and beyond in this respect. We have our standard format for a target opportunity sheet. It matches what you guys learned in the solution-based sales class. They've taken it to an nth degree, if you ask me. They not only summarized the research questions and the identifying questions we want to be asking, but they've broken it down by different product categories and helped us see some of the hazards that the customers may be facing on those sheets, as well as their solutions that they'd have. So it's a really good takeaway to help you guys, take what you've learned here and use that as sort of your cheat sheet to prepare for these conversations. So we're super thankful to have 3M here and helping us develop this content and more so learning to coach to our solution-based sales methodology. I mean, the fact that they're talking about research questions and the identifying questions that find the pain points, it's an awesome collaboration. And I can't express enough how much I've enjoyed working with Dana and the team over here, producing these classes. 3M has signed up to do one of these classes for every industry cycle that we're going to have in this series. So they are here to support you guys. They're here to help you be successful selling their products and here to really break down these industries for us from their perspective. So they've been awesome. They get what we're here to do. We're thrilled to have 3M here today with us. Before I pass it off to them, there's just one last thing to really cover, and y'all know what that is. We love your questions, man. The Q&A tends to be one of the more valuable sections of the class. We get a lot of dialogue and a lot of good insights in that area. So as we're going through today's class, please use your question panel that you have. Type those questions in. We'll make sure we're flagging them as we go, and at the end of today's class, we'll go through that Q&A and make sure we addressed all your questions. But today we have with us Dana, Laura, and Sherry from 3M. You guys got the marketing pros, you got the product engineers, and you got some sales pros in here, man. We're excited to have them all here taking us through this process. So I will pass it off over to y'all and let you take it away. And again, for everybody in attendance, thanks for being here. And for 3M, thanks for knocking this thing out for us.
Great. Well, thank you for that great introduction, Brandon. And we're having a great time working with the AD Safety Network and you channel partners here as we go through some of our priority segments. So thank you very much for joining us. We know that this is such a busy week with construction and safety stand down weeks going on. So if you're anything like us, you're probably running on a lot of coffee. But we're really pleased to be here, and we'll kind of take you through a bit of an industry overview, some market trends. My colleague Sherry is our technical expert, so she will get into some key hazards and applications. And then my colleague Laura is a senior sales expert, and she will take us through some selling tips and then your solution-based selling with some associated solutions. So that's what today will look like. Just before we get started, just a quick legal blurb. This presentation is based on the current US regs. So please consult any of your local laws or regulations. Please don't distribute it outside of your own organization. And this presentation is not relied upon as any kind of sales certification or construction certification program. So just be aware of that as we move through here. So we wanted to share with you a bit of an industry overview. This is something that we also do for our inside sales team, just to speak a little bit to what we're seeing going on in the industry, and then make some proposals in terms of where you might want to focus based on what we're seeing in terms of the industry. So for the purpose of this meeting today, we're going to talk through our industrial construction market. So we're going to omit the residential side from that. As you well know, residential is a tough market, not nearly as compliant, a lot of smaller mom and pop type shops. So for the purpose of this, we're going to focus more so on large industrial construction customers. Particularly in the three subsegments of infrastructure, building, and specialty trade contractors. So those are our three big buckets. So the way that we at 3M look at all of our industries is by NAICS code. So as you are likely aware, North American Industry Classification System codes are assigned to every organization in North America. And so what we do is when we're doing all of our reporting out and looking at the market, we roll up under these NAICS codes here. So we've provided them to you as well. And so when we're looking at infrastructure, that's any heavy civil type work, bridges, roads, water treatment plants, that type of refurbishment and new construction. On the building side, that's really a big umbrella for anything commercial, multi-residential, industrial, or institutional. So that's really anything from office buildings and restaurants to large-scale manufacturing facilities, high-rise apartments, hospitals, prisons, and that sort of thing. And then we have your specialty trade contractors. So the specialty trade contractors fall under this construction umbrella. We'll also see them doing specialty services like shutdown and turnaround work on oil and gas sites, or mining sites, chemical power plants, wind, solar. So they're really crossing a lot of segments, but they do fall under that construction umbrella because the activities that they're conducting are construction focused. So we've provided a bit more detail here in the deck with a link to all of the different types of specialty trade contractors, and there are many of them. So a little bit later, we'll get into some of the specializations there and some of our estimates in terms of PPE entitlement for these trades. So when we look at the market for construction, of course, 2020 was a difficult year for all of our industrial segments. Construction was no different. So we saw slight growth, which in comparison to some of the other segments is much less severe. We definitely saw a significant drop in oil and gas mining and some of the other industries. And looking into kind of the short, medium term, we expect to see pretty slow to flat growth in this market. But certainly a really significant market. We estimate that it's about $1.3 billion in addressable market for PPE. So a really big opportunity with so many different companies that fall within that. So when we're looking at our industrial segments at 3M, we really look at three different pieces to that puzzle as we're kind of identifying how to prioritize. So we look at the market growth or IPI as that first bucket. Of course, when we're talking PPE, we look really heavily into number of workers and employment growth estimates. That tends to give us a really good appreciation for how we can expect our entitlement to change year over year. So we've got number of workers here, and please note that in this slide we have indicated workers who are in production roles. So we've omitted the administrative staff who are not wearing PPE just to get a little bit closer to that entitlement model. We also look at things aside from the addressable market. We like to look at capital expenditures. As we see that CapEx number arise, we see more and more opportunities. It signifies that these large scale construction companies are investing in things like new equipment and ramping up for projects. So here's how the subsegments break down. We've provided links to all of these assets. They're all publicly available. We've just kind of rolled them up for you. So currently in the US, active projects and infrastructure account for $215 billion. And then you can see the breakdown by the subsegments under that building umbrella as well. So certainly messaging that we've provided to our sales reps is that in the short term, certainly infrastructure and institutional type work is where we see the most opportunity. As we see this work from home move and some closures to some of commercial facilities, we expect in the short term that many of our commercial opportunities will be a little bit slower to rebound. In terms of addressable market, the overall infrastructure work accounts for about 30% of all construction business in the US. So about $395 million in addressable market. So a very, very significant chunk there. Employment growth also in infrastructure, again, we expect to see slightly up. And then, of course, on the building side, due to a decline in some of that commercial building, we expect to see a decline in employment. We also like to look at the worker fatalities, total recordable case rates, and the various numbers are provided there for you. But certainly, as you can see on the specialty trade side, that's where we're seeing a great number of worker fatalities on site, and certainly an area where we can provide solutions to meet the needs of our customers who may have had injuries or fatalities on their sites. We also wanted to provide you with a bit of a breakdown of some of the 3M estimations in terms of entitlement. So the Bureau of Labor provides us with a breakdown of each of these key construction crafts. And then our team has gone through and provided some estimates here in terms of what we think an employer is spending per worker per year for each of our key portfolios. So you can see that there and use that for a little bit of a model. So we also suggest when you're asking those research and more detailed identifying questions when you're on site, trying to identify kind of the worker breakdown is a really great way to quickly come up with what the addressable the opportunity might be on a particular site. So in terms of relevance, of course, fall protection is a key player in the construction industry. If you don't have access to fall protection or that's not a priority, certainly respiratory and hearing and comms are also very large scale opportunities. Those tend to be the three that we lead with. We look at welding, eye and face as kind of growth areas or add-on opportunities, and then head and the connected PPE bucket is more of a supplemental sell. So this is kind of an overview of how sales roll out by portfolio. And again, we will send these slides to you so you can have a look, and feel free to reach out with any clarifying questions if we don't have time to address those. But as you can see, that fall bucket is a significant one, but also many opportunities on the respiratory side, and also a clear split there between head and face and eyewear, and some opportunities for hearing and communication. So certainly a market where we're selling basically the full bag of PPE, and we're seeing a lot of different opportunities available. Okay, so in terms of some key trends, we'll go through this quickly and then I will pass it off to Sherry. In the construction industry in the US, we're seeing a really significant shift in the labor force. So as that large group of baby boomers comes to retirement age and begins to leave the workforce, we're seeing that leaving quite a gap in terms of skilled tradespeople. There simply are not enough of these skilled tradespeople coming out of the various trade schools right now to fill the opportunities available. We're seeing the average age of a construction worker in the US is 42. We're seeing a lot of the construction companies to put in more rigor behind trying to find additional skilled workers. There are a lot of programs, of course, geared towards young workers, females in the trades, as well. Many of the organizations are offering specialty visas to immigrants to the US market to fill those available positions. We're seeing modularization as another key trend. A lot of construction organizations are finding that creating some of the prefab structures are decreasing their labor cost and improving safety, productivity, quality, and that sort of thing. So many of the large scale construction customers are moving to this model and doing some of the fab offsite for buildings and whatnot. Infrastructure upgrades continue to be a huge opportunity, as I mentioned before. As our populations grow and our infrastructure ages, this is one area that we don't see slowing down in the future at all. Certainly, we're seeing heavy investment from the government in the way of stimulus spending for these types of infrastructure jobs. Laura will get into some tips on how to keep your finger on the pulse of what's awarded and available in your territories as well. The last trend that we're seeing, move to more technology and innovative models on construction sites. More than many of the other industries, construction was a little bit slow to the party on this one, but now we're starting to see a bigger appetite for automation and technological tools being used on construction sites. For example, some of the sites are now using drones to do inspections and QC work as opposed to workers either at height or around the site. We're also seeing more of an appetite for wearable PPE and smart PPE within the industry. So we'll go through this. Our segment methodology to selling is a little bit different than a strict portfolio sell. So we obviously look at the industry and what's pertinent to the industry, the key applications, the hazards that are associated with those applications, and then we look at the product solution to mitigate those hazards. So very much aligned to the 3E solution-based selling model that you're already implementing. I think worth noting here is on the construction site, do your fact finding and probing and make sure that you're finding what their greatest problem is rather than trying to solve everything all at once. Understand the business, know the industry, and that's your best way to build those relationships in the construction industry. So Sherry, I will pass it over to you now to discuss some of the key hazards and applications.
All right, can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Wonderful. I'm Sherry Franklin Smith, and I am part of our application engineering department. I am also a certified industrial hygienist as well as a CSP, and I've been spending over 20 years of my life helping to keep workers safe and healthy. So let's talk a little bit about some of the hazards that you might encounter on a construction site. So just to kind of tell us why we should care and why this is important to us. Sadly, in the US, there's almost 200,000 workplace injuries and illnesses in construction a year and over 1,000 fatalities in construction every year. And when we further break that down, when we look at the 1,000 people that die from work-related accidents and diseases each year in construction, 33% of those were from deaths that were related to slips, trips, or falls. So that's why fall protection is one of the leading things. It's going to be probably the #1 cause of death on a construction site. So it's important to lead with that portfolio. The next thing to consider is there's almost 200,000 non-fatal accidents, and 17% of those were deaths from harmful substances or environment. So this includes being electrocuted, or also harmful substances like silica and other types of chemicals and things that you might be exposed to on a construction site. Another 80,000 injuries also resulted in days away from work. And so 17% of these were related to contact with objects and equipment. So what are some of the key hazards that you're going to find in construction? There's 2 ways to think about it. If you are around construction safety and health professionals for any length of time, they'll frequently refer to the fatal 4, and that is related to falls, struck by objects, getting caught or crushed in something, or being electrocuted. So these are like, the Pareto principle, the 80-20, the majority of the accidents are related to these types of injuries. Now, from a health perspective, you have a couple other things to think about. So in addition to working at height, potentially in dropped objects or the struck by objects hitting you, you have to be concerned about silica. You also have to be concerned about hazardous vapors. Some of the things that you might encounter on a construction site would be vapors from paints, particulates from welding fume, or other types of heavy metals that you might get exposed to. There's also hazardous levels of noise on a construction site. There's also this idea that you need to be aware of what's going on around you, because it's not like working in a building, because there's heavy equipment that's moving around you that could potentially injure you and get you caught or crushed in something. You have to worry about eye injuries and also exposures to welding related hazards, including manganese, hex chrome, the flash itself. And also on a construction site, heat stress is a major concern. So when you look at the citations from OSHA for construction, when you look across the board in construction, duty to have fall protection is the #1 thing that people are cited. Again, that's another reason why we need to lead with fall protection. And when you look across the board, 54% of citations were related to falls. So falls from ladders, fall protection systems not being done properly, or failure to have the proper fall protection within aerial lifts. So it's important to ensure that you address that. You can see also on this list that eye and face protection is there, as well as head. So all of the things that we're going to talk about today to help to keep those workers safe. So these are the things that keep that construction safety and health professional awake at night. When we consider the other further breakdown, within infrastructure, commercial, and specialty contractors, you can see that they all have duty to have fall protection as an issue, but where it falls in the pecking order is different for each of these types of groups. So within infrastructure, they're a lot more concerned about trenching and things falling in on them, so you have a lot of more issues with that, but certainly head protection, respiratory protection, and fall protections are things to lead with there. You're going to have a lot of concrete work, so that's something to think about. When you're considering commercial and industrial construction, there's going to be a lot of heights, tall buildings, so you're going to see a lot of aerial lifts. So it's important to think about that as well. The other piece with the specialty contractors, again, fall protection, ladders, lots of training, lots of eye and face with the specialty contractors and head. So similar things, but as you're thinking about which one you're approaching, thinking about what things people get cited for can help you to think about what should I bring out first. All right, fall protection industries in construction. So like I said, 22,000 falls in 2018, 11,000 falls to a lower level, and 300 falls that resulted in a fatality. When you look at dropped objects, there were over 6,000 dropped objects and 74 fatalities due to dropped objects. So why should we care about dropped objects? What happens if an 8-pound object falls on your head? Especially if you drop it from off of the top of the building. So here we're showing it, you know, without a head, but imagine if that was your head that was underneath that. So falling objects continue to gain speed and pressure, and the impact forces increase when something's dropped from height. So it's no longer just the weight of it, but the increased force from gravity and the acceleration of it falling for so many feet. So it's critically important to make sure that tools and other small objects stay tethered to the person that's wearing them, and ensure that there's head protection for anyone who sadly gets caught by one of those kinds of things. So you definitely want to have your hard hat on to help protect you from falling objects. Okay, that's enough for this. Thank you. All right, so now we can talk about other trends and opportunities for fall protection for tools. So like I said, across the nation, there's over 50,000 struck by falling object recordables every year. That's one injury from a drop object every 10 minutes. And sadly, an 8-pound wrench, when dropped from 200 feet, would hit with a force of 2,800 pounds per square inch. So basically, it's like getting hit by a car. All right, next. So just to kind of give you an idea, across the top of this chart is the weight in pounds of the objects. So going from 1 pound to 10 pounds, and the height from which you drop it. And so you can see that as the weights get slightly heavier and the heights get higher, the amount of impact force from that same 8-pound weight can go anywhere from 61 pounds up to 4,000 pounds of force once it actually impacts your body. As you get to the higher levels of force, you go from a serious injury to a fatal injury. Not only do you have to worry about objects dropping straight down, objects can also deflect. Sadly, there was a story of a person that was visiting a construction site to make a delivery. A tape measure was dropped from several feet high. It came down, it bounced off of something and struck that person in the head and killed them because of a deflection. Sadly, an object dropped from 200 feet, that same 8-pound wrench can deflect up to 400 feet or 4 football, or almost slightly more than a football field in terms of its deflection. So it's important to keep those objects tethered as much as possible. So we'll be talking later about our fall protection for tools line. Another thing that's a trend in construction is silica. There's 2.8 million workers affected by silica, with 2 million in construction. And so almost any construction site where there's cement, breaking of rock, moving of dirt, there's an opportunity in pouring of concrete for there to be silica exposure. Another thing to note is middle of last year, and despite the pandemic, OSHA was able to come out with new inspection procedures for the silica standards. And so these became effective in June 2020. And within it, there was a lot of additional instructions around construction and ways to avoid silica citations. So one of the things to think about is the silica citations generally fall around 3 key areas. First is Table 1, the exposure assessment, and then having a written exposure control plan. So what does this mean for me as a sales rep? Table 1 specifies what type of controls people have to use to minimize the dust on silica. And so it's going to include like water controls and other engineering things that they need to put in place. But it also specifies when they have to wear respiratory protection. So if you are the sales rep and you approach a site and you say, are you using Table 1 for your exposure assessment? And they say yes, you can ask them the question, you know, are you using the proper respiratory protection? And if so, that would give you an opportunity for a sale. Next. So next we're going to talk about protective communications. Another key concern on construction sites is being able to talk to each other. It's noisy. You have periods of quiet, periods of intermittent noise. Somebody maybe is jackhammering, and perhaps they may not be able to communicate with each other. And it's a value to consider these protective communication devices. They allow clear communication and noise. Because of the noise canceling microphones, people can talk, and even though they're jackhammering, they can still have a conversation. Next. So how do these noise canceling microphones work? So if you give me one down arrow, please. There is sound on either side of the microphone. So maybe there's a jackhammer that's going or a nail gun that's nailing. And then one more time. So what that does is it cancels that sound out. And then, like one more time, it allows the speech to be heard in the microphone. And that speech is what gets transmitted and not the sound. So just to kind of give you a sense for how this would work, next slide. If I'm jackhammering, and the way the simulation works, if I'm wearing passive earplugs, I'm going to be in that noise, but it's going to be a lot quieter, but I'm not going to be able to have communication with somebody else. But if I'm using a protective headset, it not only provides me the passive protection of reducing the sound, the noise canceling microphone will allow me to have conversation with somebody else across the site. They'll be able to hear that clearly and not hear the jackhammering. And we have a little simulation for this, which we'll send out to you afterwards for you to be able to hear. Next. So the other thing to think about is working at height. Like we said, this is the #1 issue. Certainly you don't want to fall from a height, but another concern in construction is this concept of a leading or a sharp edge. So this is anytime, so if you see in this picture, I see a lot of edges here. If I fall and my lanyard contacts with the side of that beam, it could potentially cut it. So it's important if you see anyone working in a leading or sharp edge application that you ask them to use a leading or sharp edge type lanyard. So that would be a self-retracting lanyard, which would be the leading edge version of that. Also, you have people working in elevated work platforms. You definitely don't want to fall out of these. So there's been lots of accidents where people are ejected from these elevated work platforms. So personal SRLs are great for these elevated work platforms. The other thing is something called suspension trauma. So when you fall, if you're not rescued in a certain amount of time, the blood will pool in your legs and you can pass out and you can eventually die from this concept of suspension trauma. So one of the new things on 3M products is we have these trauma straps, which are on the fall protection harnesses, and you can undo those trauma straps and put your leg in there to help you to kind of reduce that suspension trauma if you should fall. So generally solutions are going to fall into several categories. We call it the ABCs of fall protection. Anchors are what are you going to connect yourself to. Harnesses are the body support or what you're actually going to wear on your body. And then the connectors are the lanyards, which connect you to the anchor. And lastly, should you fall, you need to consider your rescue plan or what rescue products you might want to have in place in case you fall. The other thing that you need to protect are dropped objects. So there's bucket solutions, netting, and tool tethers, all of which we'll talk about in a little bit later. And training, failure to have training was another reason why people were cited. So we also offer paid training that people can take. So when we talk about silica, we're talking about concrete work and dust. When you're doing concrete work, you have to be concerned about the respiratory hazard of the silica itself, potential eye injuries from flying objects, heat stress from being outside in hot weather, and also the noise exposure from the grinding and other parts of the equipment there. So we have several solutions that can help you with concrete dust. If people are working, they need to reduce heat stress, eye injuries, and respiratory hazards. They can look in our powered and supplied air solutions, which would provide protection for all three. They could also use a full face piece respirator. And for the silica itself, you can also use a filtering face piece respirator. From the eye protection, we have safety glasses, face shields, and from the head, the hard hats. You can also include gaskets with those safety glasses to help additional dust ingress from the eyes. And lastly, you want to protect the hearing. So we have a full line of hearing protection products, which you can use to help to protect the worker's hearing. So when you're thinking about high noise environments, you certainly have intermittent noise, continuous noise, not the ability to communicate, but there's also another thing that you have to be concerned about, and this is the concept of situational awareness. One of the largest hazards on a construction site, especially if you're visiting a road site, is being hit by equipment that's on the site. And there's a lot of times there's backup alarms, but if you can't hear them, then you have a risk of being hit. So one of the places where you consider these protective communication solutions is if you have a flagger or a spotter. So what about that spotter being able to actually talk to the driver instead of using hand signals? So that's another opportunity or another place for you to consider selling these options, as well as our hearing protection passive muffs. A lot of places, if there's not backup alarms or other things moving equipment, you may be able to be just fine with regular passive hearing products. And that, I'll turn it over to Laura.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Sherry. Hi, everybody. My name is Laura De Silva. I am a program manager in our safety division at 3M, and I work with large construction customers, typically more at the head office, building strong safety programs. And then I really am a quarterback with our team, our field team across Canada and the US, and making sure that we're implementing these safety programs out at site. So I'm going to talk a little bit about contractors and subcontractors, and then we're going to talk about some selling tips and a little bit about product applications. Next, please. So a general contractor, obviously they're identifying and managing worksite hazards, but they may only be providing PPE to their own employees. A general contractor is really responsible for the overall coordination of a project. They're responsible for providing all the material, the labor, equipment, and services necessary for the construction of the project. A general contractor often hires specialized subcontractors to perform all or some portions of the construction work. And when using subcontractors, the general contractor is responsible. So the end result, they're responsible for the quality of the work that's being performed. So the general contractor's #1 priority is really safety on the job site. Thanks, Dana. Next. The subcontractor is really a business that is signing a contract to perform part or all of the obligations of a general contractor's contract. So employing those subcontractors, the general contractor hopes to receive the same or better service that the general contractor could have provided by itself at an overall lower risk. So that subcontractor, because they may have specialized skills, they may often outfit their own employees. So it's really important to know both the general and the subs that are on these sites. Next. Okay, so let's talk a little bit on how we can win in construction. We're all salespeople here, so really what's going to get us the wins here on these sites. So some tips that we can share with you: really be visible and available on site. Make sure that these people know who you are and that you're a resource that they can trust to be available to provide immediate solutions to their ever-changing environment. Construction sites do change their hazards. They can have new hazards that come up, and really being that resource for the health and safety managers really are going to go a long way for you, and not just maybe on this site, but another project that comes up. Next. So sample, sample, sample. I think we all know that that's very true, and so definitely with construction, sampling is so important. So having some things in the car with you that you can provide to them, we'll get into some questions, some questioning later on here that's going to help you provide those samples, but they do work. And everybody loves to get new technology and free stuff. Don't use the free stuff just to win somebody over, because it might not get us the sale at the end of the day. You know, really what we want to make sure that we're doing is following up to see how it's made that worker's job easier. And it's going to provide you with some solid feedback when sharing with the decision maker the things that are going on site. It's really important that we keep those decision makers involved through this process, though. We want to make sure that we're advising them that we are sampling, that we are doing these things, and they may want to take the lead in a trial. And it allows them to really internally win and make things better. And they can see is, you know, they've made the improvements versus us. So lead with the easy sell. You know, we say here eye injuries. It is a very quick way to provide a solution and prevent injuries on site. So eyewear is simple. It makes immediate impact. With so many workers having face coverings these days, our Scotchgard anti-fog eyewear with a gasket is a great way to make an immediate positive impact. Obviously reducing eye injuries from dust on the job site, keeping workers safe, but it's also reducing and eliminating the need with our Scotchgard anti-fog. It's removing the need for them to take that eyewear off and wipe off that fog condensation that's going to occur. So that's a great way to start. Next, Dana. Thanks. Being part of the industry. This is really, really good to do. Obviously, attending events to learn more about key concerns that our customers might have, and then, you know, following the dotted line to what PPE solutions that we can help with. And you're building relationships along the way. A real easy way to start to get connected is LinkedIn. It gives you the ability to join groups easily and provides information on trends and challenges. So, you know, just some examples here. I belong to the Construction Environmental Health and Safety Industry Best Practices Network. Locally where I live, I follow the Toronto Construction Association and Construction Canada. And then I also follow the construction companies in which I work with and the ones that I'm prospecting. You can learn a lot from what they're showing and getting connected with people within that safety group at those companies. Next. And then follow the money. We really want to make sure that we are following where projects are awarded. So large infrastructure projects are typically public knowledge where government's involved. A quick Google search can provide you with a great deal of information here. Another thing to do here is sign up with construction companies, their news feeds on their websites. So you can get emails notifying you of new projects that have been awarded to them. This helps you get in early to the main people when the projects are being awarded. You can have those conversations early on and help get 3M Solutions and yourselves spec'd into the project. Contractors tend to be just in time for PPE needs. So understanding how they're going to man up on a project provides really good intel for yourselves and also 3M as a manufacturer to help build up stock plans that's going to enable that quick turnaround to get the PPE to site as needed. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's talk about this 3E solution-based selling. We can go to the next slide. So focus on fall protection here. Sherry was great to go through the primary pain points. As salespeople, we want to look at what our questioning technique is here, right? So our research questions, really important. How many workers do they have working at heights? Do they have fall protection training? Do the workers who encounter leading edges? What is your biggest concern regarding fall protection? You know, it's really a good opportunity to get your customer, your client talking to you and explaining, because everybody feels that they've got a different or unique situation, right? So then identifying questions, we talk about how to calculate, or how do they calculate the fall clearance measurements on their site. Ask them, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would your workers rate the comfort of their harnesses? What would make it a 10? Do your workers need to tie off at foot level or always overhead? And very important, what's your rescue plan in the event of a fall? A lot don't have one, or 911 is the answer, and we all know that 911 is not the answer. So let's look at some key attributes and solutions here. You know, we've got a variety. We've got our harnesses, we've got some SRLs, we've got some anchor beams, and then of course our fall protection training. I'm going to focus on a couple here, and one, obviously the go-to are harnesses, right? They're obvious for fall protection. And we're showing our ExoFit and our Protecta brands here. Understand though that we have a full breadth of harnesses to suit all applications, and Sherry had mentioned earlier, but you know, we feel it's so important when the event of a fall, keeping somebody safe while they're waiting for that rescue to happen. So we've actually integrated trauma straps into all of our harnesses. It used to be an add-on, an accessory that you could buy. We feel it's that important. We've implemented it into every harness we have. So our 3M ExoFit gives the wearer the ultimate peace of mind, comfort, convenience, efficiency, especially when they're carrying a ton of gear. So, you know, skilled trade here would be iron workers. That would be a really good focus for our premium harnesses. Our Protecta brand provides comfort and compliance. It's a great price point for that cost-conscious client that we have in construction. Absolutely, there are many cost-conscious construction companies out there. So another product that we could look at is our DBI Salas Smart Lock SRL. This is a great product for both vertical, overhead, and horizontal leading edge applications. 3M has taken an intelligent approach to protection at heights with this smart lock technology, by creating this SRL that provides fewer unintentional lockups. Typically with an SRL, you know, if you walk a little too fast, it's going to lock up on you. So the way that we've created this, we've engineered this arrest mechanism that can better accommodate a worker's natural work motions, and it's reduced lockups by about 29% in those horizontal applications. And then in vertical applications, this SRL helps protect workers up to 310 pounds from falls when working with a 4-foot fall clearance, meeting OSHA's 1910 general industry rule. This SRL is great as far as convenience. It's got a swiveling anchor and carabiner included, and an ergonomic handle for easy handling, and then carrying up to where they're going to need it, and for installation. And then just one last point I want to make here. It's very important, but know that we have paid fall protection training. You know, we need authorized people on site. We need competent persons on site. And we provide all of that with our paid training. We've definitely done in class, but with COVID, we're having more virtual environments. So talk to your 3M safety specialist that you work with, and see how we can help in that area. Next slide. Dropped objects preventions, questioning techniques here, research questions. How many workers do you have working at heights? Have you had any injuries or near misses due to dropped objects? I guarantee you those near misses, every single person that you've talked to has had a near miss. What does the dropped object prevention program entail? Identifying questions. How are your workers securing their tools when working at heights? What's the most commonly dropped object that you can see on your site? I think Sherry already alluded to one of them, tape measure. How do you ensure that workers on the ground are safe from falling objects? So again, is there netting, so on, but you know, some things fall through that netting, right? Or that deflection that goes on. So how do we keep people safer? And how do you guard against, again, that object deflection on site? So a couple of key products here that I'd like to focus on would be our DBI SALA Safe Bucket. It's really a must-have on a construction site. There are many tools that workers need while working at heights, and this bag allows to pack up to 100 pounds of tools. It's a canvas material in construction, and we have a hook and loop closure system to ensure that everything stays in the bag in case there's a little bit of a mishap. The hoisting strap has a built-in carabiner that cannot be taken off, so that somebody doesn't walk away with it, and which allows for very easy hoisting to those work areas. Another product in the top right corner is our small parts pouch. It's a great piece of equipment as well. This allows the worker to keep all, you know, small things such as fasteners in the pouch, and they can pull them out as they need them. This pouch has a duckbill construction, which means if the pouch were to be tipped upside down, nothing is going to come out. You can easy retrieval of those small parts, but nearly impossible for anything to come out of it in the event of an accident. This pouch can also be used from a belt or a harness, so super convenient. And then I'm just going to quickly reference the radio holster and the hard hat tether. Those are super easy things to sell. You know, hard hats are meant to be kept on the head, but from time to time, you know, there might be a bump and it comes loose or it falls off. That tether is there. They can throw that back on their head very quickly, and it doesn't go rolling around or ends up falling off of their work area. Another thing, those cell phone holsters, I have to say the cell phones are probably one of the most expensive assets to replace, and super common that they get dropped. So yeah, it has, you know, a couple of those samples in your car to show. Fantastic thing to keep in your arsenal. Next slide, please. Silica and dust producing applications. There are questioning techniques here, research questions. What type of concrete work is being done on site? Do you have a respiratory protection program? What types of challenges are you facing with your current PPE? And then what type of eyewear are workers wearing? In the sake of time here, I'm just gonna, I know Dana, you've got these lists for them. So we'll skip through the identifying questions, but know that we have a great list for you for leading questions. Couple focus products here. Our TR600 in the top left corner is really a complete solution for you for respiratory head and face protection. The respiratory protection can be a HEPA for particles or combination of HEPA and cartridge for OV or AG. They may be present in the application. And the face shield's equipped with a premium visor to ensure protection so the worker can still see their work, but they're being protected. Just to note that the helmet is a type 1 class G, so ensure with the client that this is acceptable for the type of work that's being performed. And then also the lithium ion battery allows for many hours of work, so up to a full shift and beyond before it needs to be recharged. And the great thing about these PAPRs is that no fit testing is required. And as far as clean shaven, you know, the trend with beards and so on, so this is a great product for that. Another one I'm going to point out here is our 9205, our N95. It's a great disposable respirator option for many construction clients, and they tend to lean that way. They're inexpensive, disposable, to be able to complete the task, but fit testing is required, and the worker does need to be clean shaven. So this respirator in particular is great. It fits the majority, a wide range of face shapes, and it's a really comfortable option. So for construction applications, this may be a product of choice as the respirator comes individually packed, which allows for kitting. If you as a distributor are kitting a construction kit for them, or the worker is keeping that respirator on his tool belt or in his pocket or in a safe bucket. It keeps it clean until they need to don that to perform the task. Next slide. So high noise environments, again, in the sake of time, you can see we've got our research questions here for you, identifying questions. And I'm just going to look at two products here. On the top left, our Peltor WS Lightcom headset. It's a great option for communicating at a distance or noisy environment or both, which we see a lot of those situations on construction sites. So this communication headset can be connected to analog and digital two-way radios for clear hands-free communication. They have Bluetooth capability, so they can be wirelessly connected, programmable to radio channels, and they're really built for construction sites, super durable. They offer amazing environmental listening, which Sherry had talked about, while still allows for them to communicate. They can still hear that environmental going on, so there still keeps them safe. And it allows them to communicate without having to remove their hearing protection. And then lastly, in the top right corner is our EEP 100. This is an electronic earplug, and the advantage with this plug is keeping the workers' hearing safe while improving their situational awareness. So if we think about that spotter, the question as far as spotters communicating, how do they communicate, and is it hand signals? When there's equipment around them, that noise level can be hazardous. So we have them protected, they're hearing protected, but we also have included external microphones, which allows the worker to be aware of everything that's going on around them, such as forklifts, trucks, fellow coworkers communicating with them. And next slide, and I think I'm handing it back over to Dana.
Yes, so I'll go through these really quickly because we want to have a few minutes for questions, and Sherry and Laura and I are happy to stay on for a few minutes to answer any questions as well, or you may reach out to us at any time. So just wanted to provide a bit of an overview. As Brandon alluded to early on, we will be back here once every month or two to do a various segment session similar to this. So we've provided a link to the registration for our upcoming mining, pharma, food and bev sessions. And we will continue to work with the AD Safety Network into 2022 on some other training programs. So if there's any topics of interest, please reach out to Brandon and the team, and we'll be happy to join you and present some content. For those of you that are our 3M channel partners, you will be receiving a very comprehensive construction segment toolkit later this month. We are just putting the final touches on that now. So stay tuned for that, and reach out to your RDL or 3M contact, and we'll make sure that we get those assets to you. We've provided some quick links here to a variety of different specific construction assets that we've prepared. So we do have a 3E selling quick reference guide that will circulate after this talk. We've also got some demand generation assets, as well as some silica fall protection and other resources that you can reference. We've also provided a link to our safety stand down toolkit, which contains a series of assets that you can use for various safety days, for stand down week and other safety days throughout the year. Sherry and the team have been working really hard to put together a series of COVID resources specific to the construction industry. So we've provided those there, as well as the most current external guidance from the various governing bodies. So these are our contact details. So please, again, feel free to reach out to us with any questions whatsoever. We're happy to help. And Brandon, I guess we'll pass it over to you if there are any questions.
Awesome, y'all. Very, very well done. I appreciate all three of y'all for helping us build and contribute to this class. I mean, it's fun hearing Dana's here, your perspective on breaking that industry down for us. Laura, your sales tips are just wonderful. And Sherry, you taking us through the why and how these things work. It just all came together nicely, though. So thank you. So we do have a few questions coming in over here already. So I'll go ahead and get a couple out there. If you guys are out in the audience, I know we're hitting the top of the hour right now. So we certainly appreciate you being here. If you got to run, we understand. But if you have questions, start throwing them in. We're happy to go ahead and knock those things out. So looking at one of the first ones, and this is a curious question, might be one worth following up with Todd on, but Todd Gunther, it's good to have you out there, Todd, with us. He's a consistent listener for us out here and asks some good questions, but he was just looking for some advice on how he can approach this from an inside sales standpoint or remote standpoint, just given the dynamics he's working with. So do you guys have any insight offhand that you'd share of, you can't go visit on site or be there with him, how you can approach it from the inside? Is that something you want to follow up with him on?
Yeah, I mean, I can take that. It's certainly, and I feel the pain. We can't be on site as much as we'd like to, and I think it's just regular getting in touch. I kind of think back to I'm going back a number of years here, but going back to my customer service days, and just having sort of that cycle and building into your calendar that I'm going to reach out to Joe, every second Monday, and just having that continued touch point, right? That becomes an expectation for your customer too, that, hey, Todd's going to give me a call, right? Hey, I've been expecting your call. I've got this issue. And they might be reaching out to you sooner than later. So I guess that's one quick tip that I would suggest, is making it a regular routine of getting in touch over the phone.
Yeah, Laura, I think it's a great one. We call that a cadence, just making sure that person's aware of your cadence and that expectation gets developed. I think that's a great thing to put out there. And, I think, I don't know if it was Laura or if it was Sherry who mentioned it, but, you can join their communities. We can't always go to the events in person anymore, but I mean, heck, there's LinkedIn groups you can join they're a part of. There's a lot of things we can do virtually now to be a part of their community outside of just the email interactions and the video interactions. So Todd, you might want to consider seeing if there's groups in your local communities or local construction companies are all part of, and joining them that way as well. But great question out there, man. So we have another one, another question from Billy. You guys have a bunch of comments on here, folks, just saying this was very helpful. They're very thankful for it. Freddie, one of the comments he put out there, that sales tips were great. Freddie, I couldn't agree more, man. I love the sales tips section. But Billy had a question. He said, and it's just in regard to the ExoFit and the protective harnesses. Are there any lead time concerns he needs to be aware of there, or is those things that are available that for the distributors to pick up?
Yeah, I can field that one. Oh, do you want to go, Laura?
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, the products that we featured here are ones that are largely in stock, particularly on some of the categories that are heavily in demand, like our respiratory products. So we featured ones that have a good lead time and are currently available. And then Laura, you can probably speak better to the fall protection side.
Yeah, I would just probably follow up with that, getting back to my comment about manning up, right? The more we understand about how things are going to build up, how that construction site is going to build up, the better we can make sure that we've got that inventory. And this is certainly construction season, right? For sort of maybe the northern states, right? Maybe in the south it's been going on for a while, but I would just be in touch with your 3M safety specialist, right? The more communication that goes on working as a team, really see it as a trilateral partnership with the end user, with yourselves, and then with our safety specialist, the more that we can plan and make sure that the stock is there for you.
That makes good sense, Laura. And I mean, that goes hand in hand with our solution-based methodology. We want to make sure we're asking all the right questions, gathering all the proper information we need, so we have context of when the job's gonna be done, how many people are going to be on this job, so we understand the potential opportunities we have in front of us. So, if we I know you guys listed that question twice. How many people are at heights for both drop down dose and fall gear? So, important information for us to gather when we're out there meeting with the customers, so we can give our supplier partners the proper context. So we had another one on here, and this question we can answer flat out. You got a couple folks asking, can we get copies of this deck? And that's an absolute yes. They've already gave it over to us. We're going to make sure we get you guys copies of the deck at the end of today's training. So that'll be coming your way, Corey. We appreciate that question. Again, you got like Amy Underwood saying, great presentation. You guys will see these comments from the 3M team. We're gonna share this stuff with you guys. You'll see the sales pros, the comments they're making. it's looking great on here. But looks like there's no more questions for the time being. So for everybody in attendance today, we really appreciate you joining us again for the 3E solution-based sales series. In my estimation, 3Ms really went above and beyond in this series for us. By breaking down the industry, it's really cool to see the growth trends, the opportunity trends we're seeing. Where to focus first. The other folks saying great presentation, guys. Ryan, we appreciate that comment as well. So all in all, we appreciate y'all being here. 3M team, are there any final remarks that you'd like to conclude with?
I think, Brandon, just feel free again to reach out to us if you have any follow-up questions. We're happy to be resources for you, and do take a few minutes and check out some of the quick links that we sent you, because we think that there's some relevant information you might want to pass along to your customers as well.
Yeah, totally agree. Tremendously powerful sales resources you provided us, all the way down to sales resources just for construction. So take advantage of those, guys. The slide deck has those linked in it, so you can go right into when we send you the PDF. You can drill into those links, and it'll take you to where you can get those assets that they've been so kind to put together for us over here. So with that, the 3M team, we appreciate you guys. We look forward to having you back here for the next cycle when we shift out of construction. But until then, everybody in attendance today, please reach out to them, find ways to go and jointly pursue some opportunities together. And we appreciate y'all being here. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.